What is going on, team? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Niam and this is day 6 of figuring out how I'm going to make money in Bali with only 60 days until I go bankrupt, and I'm sharing the journey right here. So if you're tuning in, thank you very much. And in this video I'm going to share with you how to generate unlimited creative ideas for your content, for your business, for everything. Because today I didn't actually want to film this. I really didn't want to film this because I was like, I don't know what I'm going to talk about, and I wasn't feeling very creative. And it got me thinking, and I started reflecting on the times that I am creative. And what I'm going to share with you today is how to get into a state where you are incredibly creative. Because I think actually you can be intentional about it and become creative if you do what I say in this video. And in order to explain the idea, I really need to tell you a story about a man called Steve Jobs. And you know who he is because he created the wonderful, amazing company that Apple is today. And when they first started Apple, interestingly, it really wasn't what it is today. And Steve Wozniak basically was the engineer and the brains behind what they produced. And the first Apple computer was really basic. And if you don't know, Steve Jobs went to, and Steve Wozniak, in order to sell this Apple computer that they'd created, they went to the Homebrew Computer Club in their area and they pitched it, and only one guy was interested. And it was basically just like this circuit board which could hook up to a screen. I can't remember the exact details, I'm going to be completely honest with you. But like, it was a very basic computer. Like, it really couldn't be used by the average person, and it was really targeted towards computer enthusiasts. But when they went to make the second Apple, Steve Jobs was completely adamant that it had to be something completely different. It had to be something that could be used by the average person. And so when they thought about building the Apple II, it was like a shift from something that a computer enthusiast could use to something that the layperson like me or you could use. And this layperson needed something that was a bit more, I guess, user-friendly. It needed to look better. It needed to be appealing to someone that didn't know how to like solder on a circuit board, basically. And interestingly, Steve was looking for, or thinking about, how to encase this computer, right? And if you look at an Apple Mac today, it's like beautifully designed, it's really sleek. But back in the day, like there was no computers like that. And so in order to create this masterpiece, and obviously it wasn't the same as what a Mac is today, they still had to be really creative. And interestingly, when Steve Jobs was walking through the department store at Macy's, that's when he had the idea. He was in the appliance aisle, in the electrical appliance aisle, and he was looking at all these electrical appliances at Macy's, and he was like, actually, I don't think it was electric appliances. It was some sort of kitchen appliance. I can't remember the name for it, but it was some sort of kitchen appliance. And he was walking in the aisle and he basically saw this kitchen appliance and it had like a plastic casing, and he was like, cool, this is going to be the inspiration for what the case for the Apple should look like. And he got that idea there and then. And I think the point that I'm trying to make is that now in this world, we're constantly consuming things, and we're constantly on our phones, we're talking to people, we're doing something, we're super busy. And often productivity and busyness is hand in hand. You know, if you're busy, you're being productive, right? But if you actually look back at the greatest thinkers, Steve Jobs, Einstein, I don't know who else, Darwin, all these guys, they changed the world with their ideas, right? They had great ideas, they revolutionized industries. And if you look at their lives and the way they spent their time, they actually had a lot of time where they weren't actually working on the thing that they were working on. They weren't super gripped into the laptop. They weren't super busy working on the business. But they actually had a lot of like idle time where at the time there wasn't anything to consume, right? They used to go for walks. They used to play, like Steve Jobs used to play the guitar. I think Darwin used to like write letters, you know, Richard Feynman used to play the bongo drums, and they used to do all these other things. And it was often at the time where they were doing something different to the work that they were doing. Their head was in the clouds almost. They had these amazing strikes of lightning. And I remember when at one point I was training at Nirvana Gym. Nirvana Gym's in Bali. It's an awesome gym, incredible gym. And I used to go to the co-working space and I used to write. And to be honest, I don't write as much as I used to, but I had this great routine where I'd go there, I'd get a nice espresso. Actually, it was an Americano, but I feel like when you say I got an espresso, it just sounds a bit more cool. So I'm just gonna roll with it. I used to get this espresso, and it was really, I had this routine where I'd just write, and then after about an hour of writing, I would go for a walk, and there would be this like, it was kind of dumb because there was this like loop one-way system, and in Bali, if you don't know, the cars, they basically go on the road, and then the motorbikes and the bikes would just go on the side onto the pavements. And so sometimes I would be the only person walking on this pavement, the only person, quite literally the only person, because no one else really wants to walk on a pavement where you've got bikes going on it, because there is a little bit of a fear of like getting hit by a bike, right? And you're kind of getting in their way sometimes. I would stand to the side and let them go. But yeah, I would go on this path, and then sometimes there would be this whole row of bikes behind me, because obviously that is actually where they ride, even though it was a pavement. And I would walk around this loop, and it would be about 10 minutes, and I would do it sometimes 2, and then there would be like the police traffic, there would be the traffic wardens on the corner of the loop, and they would say, how many times are you walking around? And they would look at me, I'd give them a little high five, and I had this kind of routine where I'd write, or I'd create, I'd script something, and then I would go for a walk. And then on those walks is when I would have these incredible strikes of lightning. I'd have these crazy ideas about what to create and what to talk about and like different things. And that state was great because I was either creating or I was just free to think. And I was really disciplined about my phone use. I would wake up, my phone, like I wouldn't look at my phone until like 2, 3 p.m. And that was when I felt most creative. And so if you're struggling with ideas for content, or you're struggling with being creative about your content or your business, then I think the solution is to actually just put your head in the clouds. Stop consuming, stop being busy, just go for a walk. And I guess I talked about this yesterday, but I think that is the way to become creative, because what happens is that it almost, when you go for a walk or when you do something different to what you're doing, when you're not in this state of like hyper-focusedness, you're in this state of open focus where your thoughts are just like happy to just run, right? They're just on this like almost treadmill, this conveyor belt of thought after thought after thought after thought after thought. And because you're on this conveyor belt of thought, you're not in this like straight, rigid, narrow, focused thought. Because you're on this conveyor belt, you can think about what's going on outside, you can think about something else, and at some point something random in your subconscious triggers you to have this great idea, and then you can go back into the focused state where you're thinking about this idea over and over again, refining the idea. But you need to allow yourself the time to go into the open focus state in order to be creative. And the reason why I'm so passionate about this is because that is the only way to do it, really. And if you just constantly chain yourself to the laptop, or if you just work for 6 hours or 5 hours or 4 hours and then you go onto your phone, then you're not giving your time, your space, you're not giving yourself the time and the space in order to be creative. And this is literally just talking to myself, because this is why I probably didn't have any great ideas today, is because I've kind of not been as disciplined around my consumption. And I think it's great that I'm doing this little video here, because it allows me to really reflect on the day and reflect on, okay, like where can I tighten things up? Where can I improve? And on the whole, like I was a lot better today, where I just kind of re-clarified the different things that I'm thinking about and the things I'm working on. And I feel like from tomorrow, I actually can be a lot disciplined around my phone. And there's something happening tomorrow which is exciting. I'm not going to reveal what, but maybe that's going to be the idea for tomorrow's video. And yeah, I guess that's the message for today. If you're struggling to be creative, you're struggling for ideas of what you want to do in your business, in your life, then take some time to go into a state of open focus. Whether that's playing the violin, playing the guitar, doing some sport, going for a walk. Take your mind off the thing that you're focusing on and don't consume anything, and I guarantee that you will burst full of creative ideas. And to be honest, from experience, and I can only speak from experience on this one, I think that the more that you can practice discipline around consumption, the more creative you get. I.e., if you, for a week, spend the first 6 hours of the day not looking at your phone and you hardly like look at things and you're kind of really disciplined around the amount of time that you're on your phone, I guarantee that within a week you will be feeling more creative on that day 7 versus day 2. And so if that was interesting to you, drop us a like, comment down below your thoughts on what I've just said, and if what your struggles are on that. And yeah, look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Peace.